This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.
Welcome. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I am your host, Corey Nathan. It is an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group, a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy and how we can work together to fix it. Be sure to check out our new YouTube channel. Well, it's not new. It's been around for a while, but I've just been posting the audio on there. So now we're posting video. It's really cool. We're at Politics and Religion on YouTube. Super easy to find. And now, like I said, just all kinds of videos. I'm breaking some of these talks down into segments. So you can watch it if that's your thing. A lot of folks, that's how they get their content. Instead of just pure audio, they put the video on. So cool. There we go. You get to see my ugly mug. Today I'm wearing a Brooklyn Cyclones hat. I'm still not decided if I want to put this video up or not. But you're hearing the audio either way. But yeah, Brooklyn Cyclones. Why? Because my New York Mets are in the NLDS. They did not have a good night last night. Wait, let me finish the intro first. So join the fun on YouTube. I put a link in the show notes. Be one of the first 1,000 subscribers on there. Subscribe on YouTube. Don't forget our Patreon. We have the Patreon still thing. Write the review, all of that stuff. All those links are in the show notes. It really does help so that more people can find this program, get involved in these conversations. We're getting comments on YouTube, so that's really fun, interacting with folks on a whole other platform, just like we've been doing on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. What's the other one? Threads. So anyway, it's really good to have other folks involved in the conversation and the subscriptions and stuff. It all helps to support what we're doing and continue having conversations on topics like what I wanted to talk about today. So back to my New York Mets. It's related because last night I was at my brother's house watching game one of the NLCS, the championship series of baseball before they get to the World Series. So the winner between the Dodgers and the Mets goes on to the World Series. We were watching it with a good buddy of ours, Michael Fischler, and his wife, Brenda. Fishy is, he's a hardcore Dodgers fan. And I was interacting. We live in Southern California. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a diehard Mets fan ever since, out of the womb, basically. It was predetermined that I was a diehard Mets fan. But it got me thinking, we're sitting there right next to a good buddy of ours who's a Dodgers fan, and we feel very, very passionately about our teams. And yet we had a good time watching, even though the Mets got their butts handed to them. We had a good time watching with people who are on the other side, and it just tells me that we can do this thing. I know it's just baseball, but it's not. It's life. I've shared before, it's when I watch a game, I often feel like my Uncle Jerry and my Zeta are in the room there watching with me. It's something that runs deep. And if you're kind of dismissive about that point, if you're mocking me for even having gone that deep about something that important, you don't get it. If it's not your thing, that's cool. I'm not saying that everybody should be into a sports team or sports in general like I am, but there's something that resonates very deeply within us as human beings. There's a reason we follow these teams and get so passionate about these teams. Part of it's generational. It's a connection. Bob Costas once said, maybe he was quoting somebody else, when I couldn't talk about anything else with my father, I could still talk about baseball. So I know we talk about serious issues on here, politics and religion, but baseball's very meaningful, especially that particular sport. And again, the reason I brought it up was because we were sitting there watching with somebody who's diehard fan of the other team that we're up against. I'm actually glad that they're playing the Dodgers. I shared something the other day that if the Mets were playing the Padres, who the Dodgers beat in the division series, I wouldn't enjoy the series as much because there are characters on that team. There are players on the Padres who just are not easy to like and respect. So as much as I hope that the Mets beat the Dodgers, I respect guys like Freddie Freeman. I respect guys like Mookie Betts. I respect, watching somebody like Shohei Ohtani, who's a historic, great athlete, if you've been following baseball like I have and follow the history of baseball, what he's doing is unprecedented. Even comparing him to what Babe Ruth did in the late teens and through the 20s. Um, but that's another conversation. But my point is that there are players on there that it's not that I'm rooting for them. Of course, I'm rooting for my Mets, but I can respect them. And to watch a guy like Freddie Freeman last night on a really wounded leg. I think he twisted his ankle or deep strain or something like that. But you could tell the guy's not 100%, and yet he's grinding it out, running, scoring from second base. How can you not appreciate that and respect that? So I'm glad the Mets are playing the Dodgers, because even though I want the Mets to win, I can respect and appreciate the play on the other side. And that's part of what makes it easy. I've been in situations in sports at events where the crowd can be different from city to city and even from game to game. There are certain cities, like frankly, like San Diego. I've been down to the San Diego's park a number of times, and the fans there are great. It's a great place to take in a game. I've heard the same thing about St. Louis. I feel that way, obviously, about New York. But there was a time when we were going to Dodger Stadium when it was pretty hostile. Now, this isn't a reflection of the players, like I just said. I can really respect this team and this set of players. But if it got to a point a number of years ago, at least 10 years ago, there's a different ownership group where if you were wearing a Mets hat, I actually got threatened in the bathroom one time. I had this like semicircle of guys that surrounded me when I was going to the bathroom. And, fortunately, I just took my hat off. I asked them if I could, finish my business before they jumped me or whatever the hell they were going to do. But they were threatening. They were threatening me, hey, go back to New York, hey, they were using these derogatory terms. And I'm like, guys, it's just, like I'm a Mets fan. Like that's like it's no sweat off your back. Like leave me the hell alone. Like, are we really that tribal? So, listen, it could go either way. But what I wanted to talk about today, there are similarities here. So that level of tribal, I don't know. I think the word tribe gets overused and misused sometimes. So maybe I'll try not to use that. But like, there's this kind of animalistic connection we have to our side or our team, and we can either feel those connections to enrich our souls, to enrich the human experience, and to have shared experiences even across our differences, like I did last night with my brother and our buddy Michael and Brenda, who are rooting for the other team. Or we tap into these more primal, I don't know, lizard brain, some people say, and lose all sense of virtue, frankly. So one recently has been with the Hurricanes and the response to the Hurricanes. And I'm in disgust of how some leaders, media outlets, and individuals I know have been, instead of coming together as a community, coming together as a country, coming together as a culture and a society in order to help those in need at their time of peril, that it's used as yet another wedge issue to divide people, and to see them as the other side, as the enemy even. So I'll use this a few paragraphs from an Associated Press report. Back to back, this came out on October 11th. Back to back hurricanes that brought death and devastation to parts of the South were made worse by a wide range of false and misleading information, some of which still circulates, even though they have been conclusively proven false. Coming in the closing weeks of a hard fought presidential election, the false information became political fodder, particularly in swing states hit hard by Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. Former President Donald Trump has pushed a litany of false claims at campaign events and on social media, with his supporters helping give voice to the information. Federal, state, and local officials, including several Republicans, have condemned the false information, noting that it has made it more difficult to address the needs of those hurt by the hurricanes. And we've seen examples of this. I thought that January 6th was one of those times when we could come together, like a line has been crossed. Now, those of us who want who respect law and order, who respect our constitutional republic, our democratic republic, who uh, who don't see every single person who happens to vote a different way than we do as the enemy, that we can come together and push back against the violence that this is. But it turned out that that was not indeed the case. I thought COVID was one of those things where this is not a place for misinformation and to divide people, but to come together as a world, as a community, and to solve something that threatens us all. But again, there were elements at various levels whose primary objective was to continue to divide and tap into the most base instincts in us, or get a rise out of certain get reactions like anger and fear and hatred. So again and again over the past several years, we've seen that natural disasters, pandemics, other civil events like January 6th have been used to continue to divide us. Now, do I think that is a vast majority of us? No, I don't think so. Maybe it's just me being rose-colored glasses or something, but I don't think that's the case. But certainly those who are being given the loudest voice, those who get most of the attention and the headlines, are those who are focused on anger, fear, division, hatred. Before we move on, I wanted to tell you about something else that's important. Money. Specifically your money. In all seriousness, I wanted to tell you about my advisor and my friend, George Meza. George runs Meza Wealth Management. And with George, it's not just about money. It's about helping us manage our present and plan for our future. And unlike a lot of other firms out there, George and I actually have a relationship. He knows me, he knows my family, and I know his wonderful family. I also know his firm and the incredible team he's put together, from his chief investment officer to some of the other great people in his office, like Jessica, their head of operations, that are always there to help me and with all aspects of our portfolio. You see, the thing is, I got a lot going on. I guess we all got a lot going on, and I don't have the time to watch our investments all day, every day. And even if I did, I don't have the experience and expertise that George's team collectively has. So we get the entire Meza Wealth Management team, all their expertise and all their integrity. And again, it's based on George knowing me personally, knowing my goals, and even the kind of risk that's appropriate for me to take, which, by the way, could change from one season to the next. And they're on top of all of that. So if you want George Meza and Meza Wealth Management to be on your team, just visit their website, mezawealth.com. That's MEZA wealth.com, www.mezawealth.com. And that will also be in our show notes, so you can check that. And now, back to our show. So my question is, what's wrong with us? What's wrong with the world? Who's to blame? And is it our leaders, our elected leaders, such as they are? Is it somebody like Donald Trump? Certainly, he carries a lot of the burden of being a defining figure and a defining voice of this moment in time in our culture. Is it a certain branch of the media industry that platforms such voices as Trump, or gives a platform to the Hannitys and the Jesse Waters and I've mentioned him here in the past, at different levels, alt media, podcasters, Joe Bongino, people like that, Michael Levin. I've mentioned him in the past. So is it our leaders like Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's doing a new version of her Jewish space laser routine? Is it the media? And listen, we don't spend enough time talking about the complicity, not of the mainstream media, because that is such a lazy term that's used as a default. Oh, it's the media. and most of the folks that I know that rely on that rely on that pointing the finger at the media, the mainstream media, the lamestream media. Um, I often want to point out, like, hey, Fox News is part of the media. They are the mainstream media. Conservative right-wing provocateurs take up a significant majority of some of the top listened to podcasts in the world. So let's not pretend that the media is taken over by the left, okay? But that's sort of an aside. So is it our leaders, elected officials? Is it the media or certain branches of the media? Or is it us? So I do want to dig into the story a little bit. I think one response that I read from an elected official, Republican elected official, debunked some of the claims that you heard directly from Donald Trump that he's still spewing, that his vice president, his pick for vice president, was on air yesterday on one of the Sunday shows, spewing this nonsense all over again. But Republican governors like Governor Kemp from Georgia, DeSantis from Florida have all debunked any number of things that these jokers are saying. So I give credit to Republican elected officials that are pushing back on the misinformation and the disinformation. And by the way, I turned on Fox News long enough to see that there are certain anchors on the morning show that are they're pushing back on the idea that this is disinformation. What's his name? The main guy, the blonde-haired dude, said, you can't just say disinformation every time there's a story that you don't like. Okay, yeah, that's one way to spin it. But disinformation is disinformation. And in fact, it's harmful disinformation. And in fact, Fox News itself knows that. There's a fact sheet that's going around, and they're having to fact check their own hosts. So you can cry and complain all you want that not every story out there is going to be one that paints your guys as the heroes. And in fact, there is misinformation. But check yourself, man. I have such a little patience, such distaste for people who call themselves part of the news, part of the media, journalists who aren't journalists. They're just campaign pundits. They're campaign proxies, really. So again, I'm a little bit all over the place, but I wanted to read a little bit from the press release that was distributed by Congressman Chuck Edwards. I think he's from District 11 in North Carolina. And it was just a fact sheet of these lies that were being distributed by Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene and figures in the media. So just going down some of this list. He said Hurricane Helene was not geoengineered by the government to seize and access lithium deposits in Chimney Rock being in his district. And he details it out. There's several bullet points there. He also says, number two, local officials are not abandoning search and rescue efforts to bulldoze over Chimney Rock. Number three, again, there's more bullet points here to support what he's saying. FEMA is not stopping trucks or vehicles with donations, confiscating or seizing supplies, or otherwise turning away donations. It should be noted, by the way, that they did have to pause the distribution of donations and supplies. Why? Because militia groups in that region in North Carolina are going FEMA hunting. So the disinformation, and in fact, it is disinformation, is doing real harm. It's getting people that have this agenda, that are prone to believe some of this nonsense, that are already in fighting mode, regardless of how truthful it is or not, or how completely disconnected from the truth it is. They're ready to grab their guns, hop in their trucks, and go FEMA hunting. And what are they ultimately going to do? They're actually getting in the way of people whose houses been devastated, whose lives been devastated, who actually need the help, who need the supplies, who need the food from FEMA, who's actually doing its job. Because a hurricane that was not geoengineered by Jewish space lasers, they're stopping them from doing the work that they can do. So these lies, these fabrications, for what? For what, Donald Trump? So that you can get good ratings, you can get good clicks. For what, Jesse Waters? You could get more eyeballs. so that you can instigate the anger and the most base instincts of your audience, as opposed to sharing real information or providing real help to people who actually need it in their time of need, when a hurricane hit their homes and devastated their lives. Instead of doing the right thing, the decent thing, the good thing, the human thing, you choose, oh, well, I'd rather have the eyeballs. Donald Trump, whoever, other elected officials chooses, well, we got a race to win. If you listen to J.D. Vance, oh, well, there's some truth to what you're saying. There's some truth to what you're saying. There is a little bit of truth in there. So I'm going to make up these stories because it's so important. It's so important that we win this race, because apparently, that I don't know. I can't. It's hard for me to follow that logic. It's hard for me to follow that. It's hard for me to reckon with the slow deadening of one's soul that's required to make up lies like this, completely disconnected from the truth. Why? That's what I'm trying to work out. If you can't tell, I'm going completely off script today. Like I had this planned, but I'm going off script because there's something I'm trying to work through. There's something I'm trying to figure out. How can another human being knowingly spread lies that is concretely harming people in their time of need, in some cases, the worst days of their lives? In some cases, people have lost their lives. The deadening of one's soul that's required for what? Why? Because your hatred of the supposed other, your hatred of anybody with a D before their name who's ever voted for somebody with a D before their name. It's hard for me to comprehend the lack of humanity or that's required to get to that point. So more that there's more in this press release from Congressman Chuck Edwards, a Republican. I think I said that, but it can't. It's worth repeating. He said FEMA has not diverted disaster response funding to the border or foreign aid. That's another big one. I saw one today that on Trump's social that Trump bleated whatever out. FEMA, number 5, FEMA is not going to run out of money. Number 6, FEMA cannot seize your property or land. Number 7, the FAA is not restricting access to airspace for Helene rescue and recovery operations. Number 8, FEMA is not only providing $750 to disaster survivors to support their recovery. Like, all this stuff has been said and repeated and distributed, whether it's social media, by pundits, anchors on air, by plenty of podcasters and in other outlets on websites. So here's the thing. Is it the leaders? Is it the media? And at the end of the day, I can't help but think of this story. It might be apocryphal, but it's been widely shared that one of my favorite writers and thinkers, a theologian of sorts, named G.K. Chesterton, that the Times, a newspaper based in London, they started in the late 1700s and they're still around, sometime around 1910, published a question to its readers. What's wrong with the world today? And as the story goes, G.K. Chesterton wrote in simply, "Dear Sir, I am yours, G.K. Chesterton." So I bring that story up because I'm asking, the disinformation, the lies that are being spread about these natural disasters that are harming people in very real ways in their greatest time of need. Who's to blame? Yes, Trump's to blame. Yes, the media has plenty to blame. But at the end of the day, I have to say it's us. Now, if you're listening, you might be really devoted to developing better discernment, to developing a better eye for what is real news, what's well reported, who are good journalists to follow, that do excellent reporting. And I suspect that a lot of the listeners of this program are in that mindset. I'm not trying to blame you per se, but I think we all do need to be on our guard. I certainly am prone to believe stories that appeal to my prejudices, appeal to my preferences. So, uh, what's wrong with the world today? Dear sir, I am yours, G.K. Chesterton. So I want to be on my guard to the degree to which I my own anger, my own fear, my own hatred, or anything looking like it, uh, determines what I believe, what I'm reading, what I'm feeding myself mentally and intellectually every day. Because I know it it's us. It's not just me per se, it's us. Um, it's my neighbors. It's people I graduated high school with. It's, I hope that I get to have a conversation, and I won't be able to make any progress with every one of them. There's a guy named Sean I graduated high school with, a girl that I still stay in touch with, have a nice conversations with. We had one just yesterday about roller skating, you know. Um, there's a friend that our kids used to go to school together at the Christian school, that I hope I get to have these conversations and maybe have some persuasion of like, dude, do you know how angry you always are? Do you know that the only thing that you're watching and listening to, isn't news? It's not fact based. It's opinion based, and in some cases, uh, nonfiction based. Excuse me, fiction based. It's made up, and it's made up because you have a disposition, a default posture of wanting to be angry, wanting to hate the other side, of wanting to blame the supposed other side, of wanting to think that the left, as broadly as you might define it, is the cause for everything that's wrong in the world. And the field of vision is so narrow that you're not seeing reality. So can and I know these people to be better people, to have their better angels, um, and I hope that they're not too far gone. I think I've shared this before, but during COVID, I lost three friends. Three different people died of COVID, and in all three cases, they were buying into conspiracies, didn't want to take medicine, didn't want to even get tested. Ultimately, they were tested, and they were. It was determined that they had COVID and ultimately died from it. But it, this is real stuff. This is real stuff. So, what I've been grappling with is simply what's wrong. Like when it comes to disinformation about disasters, what's wrong with the world? Is it Trump and other leaders? Is it the media, and different media outlets, whether it's Fox News, OANN, different podcasts, different websites? The answer to all that is yes. But I think the answer that we have to reckon with, and that the good news is, I think that we may have some control over, not control, but like some influence over and even persuasion over, is us. What's wrong with the world? I am. So I do hope that I get to stay in conversation with some of these folks, have some persuasion with some of these folks, bring them back to reality, you know, and get to the other side of this. I'm holding out hope, and even if it means that all I do is continue talking about roller skating with this one person until we can get to a point where we can talk about some of these symptoms and some of these conspiracy theories, and just bring this person a little bit, just 1 degree back to reality. I'll do it. And I also know that part of the work is facing the fact that, you know, maybe 9 out of these 10 conversations, 9 out of these 10 friends are gone. They're gone. They've been lost to the Fox News cult or the OANN cult or the Trump cult or the whatever. I just have to, I'm willing to acknowledge that and accept that sad reality. But if I can have persuasion over one person and bring them just slightly back to reality, 1 degree back to reality, to me, that's the work. That's the work of Tikkun Olam. So I hope when I'm at, maybe my one out of 10 is underestimating the influence we can have. Maybe I can have even more than 1% of influence on some of these people. So yeah, I'd be interested in what you think, and if you've had some of these conversations, if other folks have just completely given up. Let me know what you think on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else. I'd love to hear from you. And as always, if you dig what we're doing here, remember to follow this show, write that review. Now you can watch these conversations on YouTube. We're at Politics and Religion on YouTube. Same for Patreon. It's patreon.com/politics and religion. Check it all out. Subscribe, be part of our first 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Really excited about all of it. Now go talk some politics and religion with gentleness and respect, and have a great week.